There we go. Welcome to Crowdfunding for Authors. Victoria and I are very excited about having you here with us today to talk about a topic that we are extremely passionate about, crowdfunding for authors. So if you're just joining us now, we're asking folks to put in the chat box where they're from. If you have a book, if you're thinking of writing a book, if you have 10 of them in your head waiting to be birthed and brought to life, we see this session as really useful for authors, for aspiring authors, for content creators, for folks that work in the publishing sector as well, coaches, entrepreneurs, speakers, really people who are wanting to bring their content to life, and how they do that might be through a book. And as you will find today, crowdfunding is a way to help you generate revenue and build a crowd so that you have a set of raving fans that cannot wait for your book to come out. So I'm seeing that we've got several published and still working on some. Would love to write a book about crowdfunding, Victoria. I love that. I think we should do that. And Alex joining us from Victoria. Oh, I miss Vancouver, Victoria so much. Northern California, awesome. Calgary. And I'm just outside of Toronto in Ontario. So why don't we start with introductions, Victoria? One of my favorite parts, because I love sharing information about you.
Why don't I introduce you first? So,
okay.
Charmaine is an 11 times best-selling author, 5 of her own books featured in 11 others, and 2 more ready for release. She is a certified professional speaker and expert in collaboration, funding dreams, and bringing projects to life. Her company, Raise a Dream, has helped many clients implement her strategies to make their book a business. And over the years, she has raised millions of dollars for projects she has been involved with, for charities that she supports, and for her own projects and in collaboration with her clients. She has sold thousands of books through collaborative campaigns. We've got some secret sauce I know you have in there, sponsorships and bulk buys.
Wonderful.
So, introduce Charmaine Hammond.
Thank you. And Victoria Bennett, who of course hails from the UK. She's lived in Canada for just over 19 years now. One of the things that really surprised me, and still I kind of get a chuckle out of this every time I introduce her, is that she actually studied biochemistry at university. So before I pass it back to you, Victoria, I want to say that what really attracted me to partnering with you is your extensive background in marketing. And then I find out that you also have a biochemistry degree from university that you said is actually very helpful in crowdfunding. So tell us how that connect happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't use my biochemistry most days, but the data analysis skills are very useful. So, one of the things that, we'll definitely cover off today is things like the gamification of crowdfunding. And so just looking at those clues, because there's lots of things you can do, but you don't always have the time or the money to do them. So it's actually analyzing what's effective and then putting your time and effort and money behind those, and then pulling back from things which, you don't want to spin your wheels. We want to make sure that this is additive. It really helps you. We do not want to detract from you at all.
Thank you. Great comments there. And I know, Victoria, over the years, you've worked with some incredibly large and very well-known brands, including Tide and Pampers.
You might have heard of a couple of them.
TD and Max. And all of this was before you set up your own consulting business about just over 9 years ago now, where you and your team are providing strategic marketing support, coaching, and certainly the consulting and guidance and training around running and setting up successful crowdfunding campaigns. This always I feel like I need to put a seatbelt on every time I say this about you, Victoria, but you've been involved in well over 100 campaigns now. And I feel like I need to update that every week because it just keeps growing. And through these crowd funds that you have been involved with, you've raised more than $20 million through them. That's incredible.
Thank you.
We've known each other for more than 5 years. We've worked together on a variety of projects, supporting one another on our different initiatives and business activities. And through the process, the best part is we become really, really good friends.
Yeah, I agree.
So, friend, shall we dive in? And I'd love to start off by just asking you the question around how you got involved in crowdfunding? Because I think this is really important where people can see that progression.
Yeah, so it was 11 years ago, and actually it's funny, I've been going through all my stuff and I actually found a lot of the paperwork from this. I should have brought the little flyer along. I was on the board of the Calgary Boys Choir, and I was asked, could you run a crowdfund campaign for our 40th anniversary to make all the events free so that every Calgarian can participate in the events? And I'm like, what's a crowdfund? I had no idea, but I was like, okay, let's go and do this. And went off, discovered what crowdfunding was, raised, that was my first successful campaign, raised enough money to make all the concerts free, which meant anybody who attended, they came for free. We asked for donations, and then that actually built up a little pot so that any boy who couldn't afford to join the choir could actually have a bursary to join. So it was, it was really, the impact was huge, and it's all about really activating that community, bringing that community together to do some good. And we were able to get small amounts of cash from, a large crowd of people, and really, as I say, able to fund all the concerts. But, when I look at it, what blew my, it literally was a game changer, because I saw, for many people, like with a book, and I know you're going to go into this, I don't think people realize the cost of actually professionally launching a book.
Right.
And if everybody has a book inside them, and we want to make sure it gets out there. And that's the thing that I just love about it, is that democratization of capital. It gives access to everyone to get the capital to do what they want to do, whether it be launch a book or launch a business, or have some sort of impact. And I think that's the thing that really motivated me, is that whole democratization. And I've been doing it, set up my business 10 years ago, and been doing it ever since.
Wow. So one of the things that we always talk about, Victoria, is the importance of properly funding.
Properly I wonder why it's important to properly fund a book.
Yes, because it's harder and harder to get into bookstores nowadays, and a lot of authors do want to have their books in bookstores, not just on online bookstores like Amazon. And when your book is professionally produced, and you have the marketing plan behind it, and a crowd that is going to want to read your book and go buy it from the store, you stand a much better chance of working with bookstores. That's one reason. The second reason is the cover really does matter. And we've all picked up books in our life and we think, I've got to read this. This just speaks to me, the cover. And then we picked up some really, really good books that we didn't read because the color or the cover, didn't speak to us in some way. And then there's a lot of authors who try and shortcut some of the important steps in the book, like editing. And don't shortcut that, because it will really hurt your chances of sales, libraries, getting it into book clubs. And of course, how you do something speaks volumes around your personal brand and your brand as an author.
I was just going to pick up on that, because that was one thing that really surprised me, is because, you think of an author and they structure the book in a certain way. And I think of all the authors we've worked with and supported with their crowdfunding campaigns. And it's, as somebody who's not an author, it's one of the things that's really surprised me when they say, oh, I've just got this back from my editor, and they've moved these whole, the whole chapters around, and how much better it works. And it's that outside view. And the other thing that I think has also surprised me is, number of people, you always think of authors of having this amazing English, if they're writing in English, of course, but, they have this amazing English. And yet, that we've worked with some who are, dyslexic, who have got, some real writing challenges, but have amazing stories to tell. And so their editors are doing really hard lifting to create a book. But why should that person's amazing story that they've got not be shared? And so those are just two things that from an editor point of view that they were real aha moments for me. In the last few years.
Yes. And, when we think about all the costs of producing a book, from your cover design, to your marketing plan, to the editing, to the layout, to the selling of your books, to the placement of your books in different online and retail brick and mortar stores, to doing book tours, media. There's a lot of revenue that goes into that, but there's also a lot of time. And then when we look at the stats that we see, and these change all the time, but the common stat I see is that most authors will sell between 250 and 500 books. And I know that selling 250 to 500 books certainly doesn't cover or even come close to all of the costs that you spend going into the book. I think it's important to note that regardless of how you choose to publish, whether you self-publish, whether you look to be published by a publisher, whether you work with a hybrid publishing company, what's really, really important is that you have to develop strategies and ways to get your book into people's hands and ears if you're doing audiobooks. And you also have to be able to build that audience. And part of how we do that is what Victoria will talk about later, borrowing an audience. And that is where we start to see authors' books become award-winning, best-selling, and create traction around the globe. A lot of authors cover the cost themselves. And so they're covering this. I've talked to authors who are starting to pull the retirement saving out, and there's other ways. Crowdfunding is one of those ways. A lot of authors like to look at pre-sales. That's another way of funding your book, is having pre-sales. And then of course, there is people like me who absolutely love selling my books in bulk and selling my books to corporations and to associations, and actually having sponsors purchase the books in bulk to be able to distribute those books to organizations, charities, and other groups that the book sits for. But the reality is that it takes know-how, it takes time, it takes energy and funds. And when I started to learn about crowdfunding and the impact that it can create for authors, I got really excited, because it really does help them build that audience, raise the revenue, create wraparound products or services. I mean, we have authors, Victoria, that we're working with that are creating training programs and calendars and journals and workbooks and sticky notepads and greeting cards, and the list goes on. And what they've done, though, in the process is built that crowd and generated the funds to do that.
And I think that's the thing I find really interesting is, I know one person we've got in our current cohort, she's repositioning herself. So she's actually using her crowdfunding campaign as a rebranding tool. Right. And I think that's the thing, is just, it's fascinating seeing the different ways people are using the tool, because it's so flexible. You can do that. Yes, you've got you're raising your funds, but what else can you do with it? So, and then, people are using it to build up their email databases, because as we know, email is key. People are using it to sell, some of their products, other products, so training products, etc. So just backing you up. It's been really interesting watching people, it's not just, come and pre-order my book. It's, that it's so much bigger than that. Now, for some people, and I mean, I'm just thinking of some of our ones, which a lot of people are talking about, say, more business style books or self-help, but we've got some, if you've got a book that's, a fiction book as opposed to a non-fiction book, one of the things that you might want to do is just to connect with your audience. And so some people there have been doing things like, going to book clubs. I don't think anyone's done this yet, where they send a case of wine and a case of books. That probably could be a good one to do.
Especially if you had a wine sponsor.
Yeah, but if you had sending out a case of books so that the whole book club gets it, and then you hop on a call and actually do a book club, virtual book club. How impactful is that for you as an author to be able to connect with people who've actually read your book? And as a book club, how impactful is that for you to be able to actually meet the author? Because typically when you read a book, you don't get to know the author, you don't get the background behind it. So I actually remember my publisher, Betty, that was one of the first things she said to me, is she said, as
as you're writing your book, you need to be creating your marketing and release plan while you are writing. And one of the things that you need to really challenge yourself with is, how are you going to let your readers know the person between the covers of the book? And that really hit me, that people want to know the author, which is another reason crowdfunding can actually help you do that. So as we start building this content tonight around crowdfunding, sparking some ideas for people, why don't you start off at the basics? First of all, Victoria, talking about what crowdfunding is, so that we're all working from the same terminology today.
Yeah. I'm just going to comment on Mila, who's already said that they have several published and several that they're working with, which is yay, but also that book clubs are a great way to sell books, and women's clubs. And I think that's it. But you see, usually it's just in our local community. By doing everything online, we're able to reach a much broader audience. So, and really find your niche. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, because we go down that rabbit hole later. But we should probably start with what is crowdfunding. So it's the raising of funds from lots of small amounts from your crowd. And the people often think it's a new thing, but the plinth that the Statue of Liberty is based on is, so the Statue of Liberty is donated, but it needed a plinth to put it on. And it was crowdfunded by the local New York newspaper. And many people got together and donated small amounts that was all collated together, which was enough to build the plinth. And one of the things that I always think is really interesting is, I think if you donated $1, you got a 6-inch model of the Statue of Liberty. And if you donated $5, you got a 12-inch Statue of Liberty. And so, we'll talk about perks, but there were perks back then. So, it's not new. And
that was before social media and email and all of the tools that we have to support us now.
Exactly, because nowadays we have online platforms that facilitate the process, as you say, social media, emails, newsletters to promote the campaigns. So, let's talk about how an author can use crowdfunding, not just to fund their book, but also to build their community of readers and supporters.
Yeah, I love that question, because the first thing we need to determine as an author starting to plan out the release of our book, even funding our book, is we have to be super clear on who is the reader. And when I ask that question to a lot of authors, they say, well, Charmaine, everyone
wants to read my book.
Everyone would benefit. And my first publisher said, everyone is not an audience. It's really difficult and extremely expensive to market to everyone. And in the process of marketing it to everyone, you actually lose your perfect audience. So be very, very specific on who is the perfect reader for your book. You might have a primary audience and a secondary audience, but as you build out this audience development plan, we have to know how to create that perfect avatar of our reader, because that then allows us to go into those communities where those readers hang out. So for example, Mila has said, women's clubs, you've already started to identify an audience for your book. So that's a really important element, is building the readers, but also it's, of course, the revenue to be able to support you in being connected to these readers. And these perfect readers and the audience for your book, they might be an online audience and they might be an in-person audience, or a little bit of both. But crowdfunding can really help you do this. And the other piece, Victoria, that I really like about crowdfunding is that the platforms allow you to engage with those readers. So you've got their email because of the process Victoria teaches around, for example, creating a landing page, announcing your book. You're able to collect those emails, so then that you can communicate with them in your crowdfunding platform, and then you're offering ongoing updates and communications about your book. And that's really important, because if we only rely on social media, which a lot of authors do, think about all the messages, not messages, but the posts that we don't see that people post.
Especially at the moment. I mean, it is just the wild, wild west at the moment in social media. Even when you get followers, so few of them even get to see your posts. One of the things that, we go through is how you can do a small spend every day what we call engagement ads that increases people's awareness and reach, but also ensures that those people who are following you get to see it as well as, new people. So yeah, it is. And, then you've got the fun of what's Twitter going to be called this week.
Well, one of the elements that you talk a lot about, Victoria, as we start to think about, we've talked about what is crowdfunding, some thoughts around how it can benefit authors in terms of building a crowd, right, raising some revenue. But one of the elements you talk a lot about is the importance of clearly defining your objectives for the campaign, your goals for the campaign. Both you and I have had to do a lot of Sunday night rescues where authors that we've never met will email us out of the blue, help, I just launched my crowdfund and nothing's happening. But they came up with the crowdfund idea on Friday and pushed go live on Sunday without any planning, no clarity of objectives. And tell us why the objectives are critical for crowdfund campaign success.
And it's not just authors. So this is across the board. I think the concept of build it and they will come happens everywhere. So, the thing about defining your objectives is, first off, there's the financial objectives. So you've got things such as, how much you need to raise to be able to launch your book. And, we always look at what your minimum you need to raise. And then we look at stretch goals. So your minimum might be, 5 to 10K to pay for that editor, to pay for that front cover, all those sort of side of things. But then you might want to do a workbook. You might want to do an audio book. You might want to do, translate into different languages. So those will be additional goals. And so those are sort of objectives that, really good to get a handle on the costs, and then are really good to get the handle on what you want to have as your objectives. And a term you'll probably hear me say a lot is success breeds success. So far prefer you to have a lower goal, absolutely get through it and go, go for 5K and get 10 is far better than going for 10K and getting 10. Still, it's not bad, but I mean, the success point of view, and in fact, usually the 5K, you'll end up with 11 because everyone goes, wow, this is the book that I must read. So that's the sort of financial objectives, but the other side is also, as we've been alluding to, the other benefits. So are you looking to build up your database? Are you looking to actually connect with people? So, you might want to do things which allow you to build a relationship with people that you can then sell to in the future. So it's really helping you to find, those additional objectives. The other thing that's really interesting is market research. So, we've seen, some of our authors actually before the campaign goes live, but they've got their database of names saying, should I use this cover or should I use this cover? Should I use this title? I mean, how cool is that? People that are in your niche are actually giving you feedback on your campaign. So, those are sort of things that, when you're defining objectives really helps. And that will help you decide which platform you use. And the platforms are specific to different types of crowdfunding. I'm just going to give you a really brief overview. So, you may have heard of things like donation crowdfunding campaigns. So things like GoFundMe, when people are in dire need and people, people feel good. You've got rewards campaigns. So Kickstarter and Indiegogo, the ones that most people have heard of. We also talk about Crowdfunder just because it makes it easier if you want to ship more broadly. But Kickstarter, Indiegogo, industry, familiar with. And so, with those, with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, with their rewards. So people back your campaigns on the anticipation they're going to get your book or the other perks that are there. And then we do have, we've got peer-to-peer lending royalties campaigns. So Dragon's Den is sort of the royalties. And then the other one are things like investment campaigns. So investment, highly regulated, very geolocated. And so, it's, you only get raised typically from people in your country, in North America, that is, let's just be clear, but that's, I know who's on the call. And, it's people who believe in your business to grow and seek a return. We haven't actually had any authors down that route yet. I wouldn't be surprised especially for those authors who want to build their book as a business and have a real potential, it will come, I'm sure. But most of the ones that we talk to are really in that sort of royalties, royalties, the rewards space. Yeah, duh.
Well, and I love you always remind authors with the rewards campaigns is there's opportunity for people to be that first to read your book, or they get invited to special things like a private book launch just for the folks that supported the crowdfunding campaign. So there's some opportunities to create very special rewards through your crowdfund. And I know, Victoria, you always remind authors about choose your campaign platform wisely. I know in our programs and our master classes and cohorts, you talk a lot about the different platforms so that authors can make the right choices, because that, I'm assuming that all of you would know that the right platform is going to get you the revenue that you're looking for. So really want to do that carefully. We've had some authors, for example, who will post their book campaign on GoFundMe, and it doesn't do well on GoFundMe because Victoria always says GoFundMe is more for a personal type of crowdfunding, such as a medical issue or raising money for someone who has lost their home due to a disaster. So that's an example of a great platform, but where a book campaign doesn't work well. Anything you want to add there, Victoria, about the right platform?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. The one thing I would say is, I come back to the statement I said before about build it and they will come. Even with the massive platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you can only expect to get about 15% of your backers from the platform. So you do really need to do the work. And I'm sort of allude to one thing is, we anticipate that a third of your backers will come from people you know. And I know that you will say, but I know no one, in which case go and have a listen to the podcast that we did, our last podcast we did, where I interviewed actually one of the people who went through the cohort who said exactly that to us. And yet, giving her the tools so that she could reach out to activate, I think she was very surprised, the people who came out of the woodwork, that she had no idea. So, a third is going to come from the people that you know, a third is going to come from the people they know. And that final third is all your other marketing activities, including the platform. So I just want, just to manage expectations. The big thing about the platforms is the tools that they give, making it easy to share. One of the things that we really like is, having the ability for authors to thank backers. And I know that sounds odd, but, we say to the authors, put aside, say, half an hour a day, go in, thank all the backers and write a little personal note. And it's amazing when we hear back from them, the relationship that they've built. And it's that sort of depth that really is helpful.
Yes.
I think just one thing I do want to talk about, just because we're talking about the platform and rewards crowdfunding, is perks. So rewards, perks, we like to have approximately 3 to 5. We don't want too many, because if you have too many, it confuses people and then they don't do anything. It's the old analysis paralysis. So, what we might do is we might have things like the book, the training session, perhaps a high value item, anything to really attract people. We want to make sure we upsell people so that, we don't leave money on the table, but we also don't want to, we want to make sure there's something entry level that people can come in. And there's a lot of gamification around the pricing. So people want to feel they get a little bit of a deal. And so, one of the things that we always talk about is things like early bird pricing or super early bird pricing. So you might have access to 10 books at a screaming deal, but when they're gone, then the price goes up. It's still a good deal, but that might be for the next 40 books. And then the next, 250 books may be at a deal, but not as good as the first 2 deals. But what you're doing is people going like FOMO. They don't want to miss out, fear of missing out. So they want to get in. And what we're looking to do is to try and get people in that first week. And, ideally, we want people to be in a campaign, have a campaign, be successful and come out. And, one thing I would just say to everybody listening today, now is the right time to plan,
Mhm.
because, everybody's in holiday mode, whether they're on holiday or not. They finish work and they want to enjoy the sunshine. Actually, I don't have sunshine today, but normally I would have sunshine. So they want to be out enjoying the sunshine. They don't want to be sort of, in front of a screen. So, I do want to say now is a perfect time to plan, and just think getting people's juices flowing around this. We one of the things that we look at is if you're running a campaign, if typically we like to say 90 days to prepare, to get the crowd really warmed up, so that when the campaign launches, people are straight in there backing the campaign. Get to 11% on day 1, get to 33% on day 7. You are highly likely to achieve your goal. That's just a bit of metrics out there. If you're doing a 90-day planning, then launch your campaign for say 30 days, 45 days. Let's just look at where we are now. You could perhaps launch a campaign, and perhaps this is a Christmas gift. Can you ship it to people for Christmas? So I just want to get people thinking about if this is right for them. This is actually a perfect time. If not, launching a campaign September, October, November, I don't like to do it after the 16th of November. People are into Christmas parties.
Right.
So, that's great. If you miss that window, then January is a crappy time because everyone thinks they're broke because they spent too much over Christmas until they get their first credit card bill and just realize they didn't spend as much. So then the purse strings open again. So you can really launch a campaign end of January and through. So I just want to get people thinking about those timings. But I think probably the key thing really is finding that crowd.
Yes. Yeah. Finding that crowd, knowing your audience. The 90-day plan is really your tool. I love when we're teaching our masterclass and our cohort, and we actually take people through the actual planning tool, the Crowdfunding for Authors tool, so that they can see all the steps during that 90 days that allows them to launch powerfully their crowdfunding campaign and have a built-in audience that the moment the crowdfund goes live, people are sharing it, there's traction, and by doing that, there's people that you don't know as an author, you've never met them, don't know them, but as Victoria said, they've come from other people's audiences, and the excitement and the traction that's being built. One of the elements, Victoria, as well, and just so you all know, we're going to be going to questions, so you can start thinking about questions. We'll be getting there soon. You also talk about the importance of being able to tell your story. We have seen over the years some great campaigns, but the video didn't land. And the video is an important part, as is being able to tell your story. So can you talk a little bit more about that, Victoria?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about targeting. And so one of the things we really help you do is to understand who your target, who you're speaking to. Because if you understand what their motivations are, understand what their frustrations are, you understand what their goals are, when you speak to them, it resonates. It feels like you're speaking to them directly, just on a one-to-one basis. It feels personal. And so, that's the first thing. But when you tell that story in that very personal way, what is the book about? Why should people care? Everybody on this call, you are storytellers. This is something you're really good at. So, leverage that skill set and really get out there and tell that story. But it's not also important, where you tell that story and how you tell that story. So, people are all about what's in it for me. So you need to focus on the problem you're solving. We have, people who are, we've got people who are talking about bullying. We've got people who are looking at new ways of thinking of their health. We've got people, as authors, who are looking at pet loss. They're all fundamentally solving problems, and they're making a connection with their target backers. And, then what we do is we share what we call a call to action. That's, we made sure people are aware of the campaign, that they're interested, they want to support your book. you as storytellers can do all that over a series of time to really get people to believe in your book, want to pre-order it, plus get all the other things. And then talking about borrowing other people's audiences, tell their friends, oh my golly, you know, I went on a webinar and, you know, I got to hear from this author and they were absolutely amazing. And, you know, I can't wait for their book. I'm listed down. I'm going to get one of the first editions, but you must get it. It looks amazing. So that's what you're trying to do, is to create that buzz and excitement that not only do people back your campaign, but they talk about your campaign and they share it.
Right. So important. A couple of keys here, Victoria, that you're mentioning is the planning, the messaging, the story, making sure that everything you do is targeted at the actual reader, the audience that your book relates to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not complicated. It's just a process you need to follow. And missing out steps reduces your chance of success. And as you said, success breeds success. So you're more likely to be picked up by the platform's algorithm if you're successful. And even backers are more likely to back a campaign when they see there's real traction. You know, if you have a book and you've got two people backing it, one's your mum, one's your sister, people are going to go, is this a good book or not? When people go in and they see 50 people have backed it, they're like, okay, this is exciting. When they go in and see 300 people have backed it, they're like, wow, I need to get this book. So, you know, that's sort of thing that we're looking at. I mean, you live in this world. I mean, you've seen campaigns that have been effective and campaigns that have been less effective.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the effective ones. They're the ones that get me excited. And the reason, just to go back, the reasons why I believe a lot of the ineffective campaigns didn't reach the success, and these are campaigns that we've watched other people do, they didn't have the right knowledge. They didn't have training on crowdfund. They just kind of came up with this goal or saw other people they know do a crowdfund and then tried to do their own. But a lot of the important steps were missing. So the steps we're talking about tonight, you will have far more success because you know some of the steps. Let's talk about some effective campaigns. You know, Carrie West, I love talking about Carrie in our cohort. She has a beautiful book, a memoir that's coming out, and she has done a great job. I want to capture a couple things that she has done so well. The recognition of the backers. So anytime that someone has backed Carrie's campaign, she did her campaign on Crowdfunder. So you can search Crowdfunder, Carrie with a C West, and you can see in there, you can go on there and see how people contribute to the campaign. And she goes and thanks them. And it's not a copy paste thank you. Each one is personalized and she's taken time. And I fully believe that that alone helped with securing other backers that were not in her circle of influence.
I completely agree with you. And she's one of the authors who said that she's got so much out of that because people have then come back. And so she's got additional value out of it. So it's taken a little bit of time, like 5-10 minutes a day, but what she's got out of it has been huge. So yeah.
And the updates, and all of our authors that we're working with are doing updates. So they do updates in the crowdfunding platform that they're using. And this helps keep those backers that have already supported you engaged with how your progress is coming. You might be reporting, I just sent the manuscript off to the editor, you know, I'll keep you posted, or here's a couple samples of book covers. What do you think? So your crowd is becoming part of your community. And I think that's really important. I've also seen authors do campaigns for, they already had a book. So they've already got their book and they do the crowdfunding campaign for a book and speaking tour, whether it's in person or virtual. That's really cool. I've seen authors who already had a book or more than one book come and do a crowdfund to create other versions of the book. For example, audio, or in other languages, or to create the workbook or the wraparound products or services. So crowdfunding is not only to get a book off the ground, there's a lot of authors who are using it to do other things with their book that they already have. And that's where things can get really exciting. The only limitation really is our creativity in terms of what we can do. So should we dive into some questions, Victoria?
I just pinged.
Oh, there you go.
Ready to say,
ask your questions here. Awesome.
Okay.
Great.
So
what platform do you suggest for authors? Which one do you use? Great question. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the industry norms are offering Kickstarter and Indiegogo, because people know what they are and they understand them. So you can say, I'm doing a Kickstarter and doing an Indiegogo. One of the challenges with Kickstarter is the fact that it's an all or nothing platform. So you remember I said at the start, what's the minimum you need to do something meaningful? Like this is hideous. Like if you had a goal of 10,000 and you raised $9,950, you have to give all the money back. I would just say back the other 50 yourself, but it is an all or nothing platform. So that's one of the challenges. Also, the fees are a bit of a challenge, and you have to estimate what your shipping costs are. So sometimes, so what you'll see is like shipping to North America, shipping to Europe, shipping. So it's great because you get the brand recognition, but there's some other sides as well. Indiegogo, so they do all or nothing or keep it all. So, if you got to the 9,950, you can take that money. And, that's good. Their fees typically are higher. So the platforms do charge fees. So there are things, things that are certain in life, death and platform fees, and the platform fees. And then, of course, the processing fees for your payment, PayPal, Stripe, whatever you're choosing to use. So there are some fees there. So one of the reasons, we've said, we've had people on the cohort who've also used Crowdfunder. That's a slightly smaller platform, actually not that much smaller. It's actually growing more rapidly than the other two. What we like about it is the very shareable content, but they also have lots of different funding models. And so I did a campaign earlier this year, and it ended up that the percentage that went to the platform was under 1%. Due to the way we had structured it. So it was really good. They do a thing where you can tip. So you put a little bit of money in as a tip when you back a campaign, and that goes off the costs. Whereas Indiegogo, when you do a tip, that money goes to Indiegogo. You don't see that money. So it's a slightly different way of doing it. But and the other thing I like is they have a shipping model built in. So so you actually put in where you want to ship to, and then the person organizes the shipping. But we've seen, some of our cohorts, they like one person I know, she's just got Amazon Prime in Canada and the US. And so she's just planning to ship everything out using Amazon Prime. So that solved her shipping issue. But the interesting thing about that is now she can't write inside the book. So one of the things, it's quite nice is to be able to actually sign the books and make it personal, or to bundle things up with a perk or something like that. So, different platforms, different horses for different courses. And that's, one of the things that we try and do is to really help you choose which is the right one for you. And it's so different for each person, but there's lots of choices out there. Yes, I mean the drop shipping is with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, often people will use third parties to do to do that, and actually it's one of the things we have in our budget is to cost that out, because the classic sort of item you get in a rewards crowdfunding campaign is a t-shirt, and I said it's death by t-shirts, because people don't realize how much it costs to get a t-shirt, even the crappy ones. Print it, ship it, and then what happens when it's the wrong size or the wrong shape and they send it back and need to order a new one, and they've got like 8 different sizes, and they've got male and female in different colors. It just so one top tip: don't do t-shirts unless there's a real business need or a real need where having people wandering around with your t-shirts going to really help your business. So that's it. But yeah, the drop shipping or thinking about the drop shipping is really, really important.
Yes. What other questions do you have for us folks? What other questions? I'm trying to think too, Victoria, some of the questions. One of the questions we get a lot is if I'm an author that is currently doesn't have a book and I'm going to be doing a crowdfund to generate revenue to cover some of the editing, the cover design, some of those foundational costs, what are we seeing authors go out with a crowdfund? And I would say the authors that we're seeing are anywhere from a $7,500 goal to about $20,000 goal. I know Carrie is over her goal already of, I think she's at, what is she at now? 20,000 or something.
Yeah.
I've seen some
her goal has
who,
gone up every time because every time she hits a goal, she increases it
for the next stretch goal.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking, I mean, Gloria, her stretch goal, I think is 50. Because she's looking at absolutely building a whole business out of this. So, you know, it can go as high as you need it to go, but I agree with you. Sort of like that 7,500, 10,000 seems to be a happy spot. And then, you know, take it from there. Yeah, whatever you need.
Well, and I think what happens with sort of breaking your project down into phases, for example, getting the book done, published, and ready to launch, phase 1. And maybe you're looking at whatever that is, 10,000 or 12,000. Phase 2 is going to be, you know, my virtual book tour. And that's going to be over 3 months. And for that, I need this much. What happens is people get really excited when they see you coming close to that first $12,000 goal. And I've even gotten involved in people's campaigns. And it's like, oh, they're so close. Let's just push them over the edge. And people do recontribute. That's a question that we've been asked before is, will people only contribute to the campaign once? And we've seen people continue to back a campaign that they're supporting.
Yeah, sometimes it's interesting. We see people doing the lowest back just to be able to put their toe in the door. And then we see, especially, you know, when it's coming down to closing the campaign, we see people go, oh, well, I better go in there and, you know, upgrade my whatever I'm doing. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely.
And let's see.
We've got any interesting questions coming through?
Yes. Okay. And there's one, can you say only US and Canada, or does it have to be worldwide? So can you put parameters on crowdfunds, Victoria?
Absolutely. And, you know, when we were talking before about the potential to, you know, you can actually put that into your shipping. That was why I was saying about crowdfunder. For some people who want to go further afield, you can definitely do that. But if you just want to keep it in North America, absolutely you can. Yes. And that, so it's curious about that, you know, is that, you can do, one of the things that's quite interesting is people even do sort of geolocated. I'm thinking of Deborah, you know, she's looking to have live events.
Right.
She's looking to have in-person events. So, you know, for her, she wants to be super tight geography, but by using the platform, it just makes it easy. People can just go on, put the money in, you know, everything's just done. So she's using it just more as a sales tool. Yeah.
I remember I talked to an author a while back and they had a book that was relevant to, I believe it was elementary schools. It was a children's book. And they were looking at actually doing sort of campaigns within campaigns, which I know Fundraiser is a great platform for, where you can do your big campaign and then campaigns within a campaign. So she was going to be looking at, in her 90-day plan, strategizing the overall campaign to get her book done. And then the campaigns within the campaigns would be for her tours of the schools. And they were going to be by geographic area, just within the states that were relatively close to her, sort of drivable. And so you can be really creative. And that's the other part I love about crowdfunding, is that you can just make it suit what you need it to do for your book and for your goals.
Yeah, exactly. That, the flexibility. Actually, that's one thing, when we start off, on the program, is we hopefully blow your mind about the opportunities, but then, looking at your business, looking at, what you're trying to do, focusing it back in, and, really helping to achieve your objectives. So that's the one thing, is like, blows your mind, focuses you in. So, I was going to say, that's lovely that,
that was nice.
Deborah recommended us to you, Mila. Okay.
Any other questions?
The answer is 42, if we're going to do the answer to the world. What's the answer? What's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? Sorry, had to get the book quote in. All
right. So Victoria, do you want to talk about the upcoming masterclass for those individuals that want to take the learning to a deeper level and start actually working on their campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I hope you've found value today. As I say, people who are crowdfunding curious is how I call it. But you can see the value that crowdfunding can bring. And especially at this time, we know, finances are tough for many people on both sides, to have the funds to launch your book, but also to have the, for people to be able to go out and participate in things like this. So it comes back to what I was saying at the start about democratization. So, this is all, great questions. But, if you want a deeper dive, we do have a longer session coming up. So everybody who's on this call, we will send, details and the link to sign up. It's a 2-hour detailed session that also includes a workbook, so that you can actually work your way through and be able to plan a campaign. So, we talked about the 90 days planning. It actually walks you through that. And one of the other things you get with that as well is you get a month free with a tool we have called the Crowdfunding Hub, which is an online community. Now, it's an online community of everybody running crowdfunding campaigns, but because of this, we have a number of authors in there. So, you'll find people running campaigns, but a lot of authors in there. And so you'll get a month access, and there's lots of additional tools in there that you can get if that is of interest to you.
Wonderful. So you'll be sending that information out with follow-up email, Victoria?
Absolutely, we will do that.
Wonderful. And I hope, take a look at what Victoria sends you. I hope you will join us on the 2-hour masterclass, because you will get the tools that you need to get started. As Victoria said, now is a great time to be in that 90-day planning so that you can get your book your campaign for your book launched. Get in there before Christmas starts to take away the emphasis. So that timing is really important. And the community that Victoria is talking about, their platform community to connect people who are working on their crowdfunds, is phenomenal, because you get exposure to all different people with all different crowdfunds, not just authors. And the ideas that people are percolating in the discussions is quite incredible.
And one of the things we found is, like, when people are putting their perks together, to be able to share with other people and get feedback. It's a very sort of safe space where people are, able to share, like they've developed a video, share the video and get feedback, So it's one of the things that I really like about it. And I should also talk about our Feedback Fridays. So much fun. So every Friday at 12 noon Mountain Time, so that's 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern, 8 GMT, and I think it even works in New Zealand. We worked it so that we could actually cover as many geographies as possible. And it's space you can come on, anybody can come on and just ask questions. And so, you know, we get lots of different people running lots of different campaigns there. It's not recorded. It's just a chance for you to ask questions and to hear other people's questions. And so that's something that you can benefit from.
Wonderful. Well, Victoria, as always, an absolute pleasure to
It's been good to see
to
you.
talk. You
And
too.
good to, thank you everyone for joining as well.
Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm excited to see what you create for your crowdfunding for your book. And Victoria, I look forward to seeing you on the masterclass.
Yes, absolutely. And watch out for that email in your inbox.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.